Lowcountry, Carolina, 1852. The kind of place where the air is so thick with heat and river damp that your skin feels borrowed from somebody else. Where the cane fields stretch like an ocean you cannot swim out of, and the oaks lean over everything like old men listening. People think of plantations like pictures in a book. White columns, bright dresses, laughter on porches. That is not what I remember. What I remember is the night the whole land went quiet at once, like someone had put a hand over the mouth of the world. What I remember is a sound in the swamp that did not belong to any animal God put here. What I remember is the way the master's lamp kept burning even after his voice stopped. And what I remember most is the shape in the tree line that watched us work by day and waited for us by night, as if it had been waiting there long before any ship ever touched this coast. So before we keep going, do me a favor. If you like stories that dig up old dirt and show you what still sleeps inside it, hit like, subscribe to Tales Never Told, and tell me where you are listening from. You are not alone in the dark tonight. My name is Josiah. I was 19 that year, maybe 20. Time don't mean much in a place where the days are already decided for you. I knew the plantation as Magnolia because that was what the master called it. We called it something else under our breath. But I will not speak that word here. Words have weight, and this land already carries enough. Magnolia sat between the Combahee River and a stretch of swamp that nobody planted, nobody mapped, and nobody with sense went into after sundown. The master said that swamp was useless. He said it was a breeding ground for mosquitoes and bad ideas. The overseer said it was where runaways hid, and he wanted to burn it every season, just to make a point. But the old ones in the quarters said the swamp was not useless. They said it was a mouth. They said it had a name older than any of ours. They said don't go in there unless the swamp calls you. I had never seen it call anyone before, not until that summer. Work started before the sun and ended after it. Cane season, rice season, it all blurred. You wake to the bell, you walk in a line. You cut, you haul, you bleed, you sleep. The heat made men stupid by noon. The insects made you feel like your skin was not yours. We learned to keep our eyes down and our mouths shut. Not because we were weak, but because silence is armor when someone else owns the whip. The overseer at Magnolia was named Harlan. He was a tall man with a narrow face and a smile that never reached his eyes. He rode a gray horse and carried a braided switch like it was part of his hand. He was not the worst there ever was. But that only means he was clever enough to make cruelty look like routine. He had 2 dogs, big mastiff things that walked behind him with heads low and lips curled. He liked to say the dogs were his family. We knew better. Dogs were for hunting what the master wanted back. Men are just dogs that learn to talk and lie. The master was named Rutherford. Broad shoulders, bright rings, a voice like cracked leather. He wore his church face on Sundays and his business face every other day. His wife was softer looking, but softness in this world can still cut you. They had a new baby that spring, a boy. They were hopeful about him in a way that made my stomach turn, because hope for them was a continuation, a longer chain, a deeper root. I lived in a cabin near the far end of the quarters with my mama Ruth and my little sister Dinah. Mama had a cough that would not leave. She worked anyway because sickness does not buy you rest here. Dinah was 12, sharp as a thorn and twice as quiet. She watched everything. She argued with the sky when she thought no one was listening. I loved her more than my own breath. Abram lived 2 cabins down. He was old, with hair gone gray where it had not gone thin, and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Abram had been brought from Georgia years before. People said he used to be a driver on another plantation, until he refused to whip a woman who had just buried her child. They sold him for that refusal. He carried a limp from a punishment nobody spoke about. He also carried words. Quiet words, the way a creek carries a path through mud. He knew stories, not the kind white men wrote down. the kind that tell you how to stay alive. One evening after work, the air near the cabins was heavy with thunder that would not break. We sat out front, eating what little corn mush there was, listening to the river hum beyond the fields. Frogs were loud that night, a steady chorus. Crickets, too, the usual noise of the lowcountry that tells you the world still works. Abram came by, slow, leaning on his stick. He stood and listened for a long time. Then he shook his head once like he did not like what he heard. "You feel that, Josiah?" he said. "Feel what?" "The quiet." I listened again. Frogs, crickets, far-off laugh from some girl trying to keep her spirit alive. I shrugged. "I don't hear no quiet." Abram leaned close. He smelled of sweat and tobacco leaf. He spoke soft. "The swamp been quiet all day. No heron, no owl, no gator slip. You think that is nothing. It is not nothing. It is like when a field goes still before a storm. Something big moving, something that make little things shut their mouths." I looked toward the dark line of trees at the swamp edge. It did look still, but I figured the heat had chased everything into shade. I was young. I wanted explanations that fit in my hands. Abram did not. He tapped his stick against the dirt. "Don't go near the trees tonight," he said. "If you hear a holler from the swamp, you stay where you are." Dinah looked up from her bowl. "What kind of holler?" "The kind that sound like a man," Abram said. "But not a man you know." Dinah frowned. "Like a runaway." Abram shook his head. "Not like that. Like something wearing a man voice as a coat." Mama made a small sign with her fingers the way she did when fear touched her. Abram walked off after that, leaving the air heavier than before. Night came thick. No breeze. Clouds rolled but did not rain. The quarters went dark early because nobody had candle to waste. I lay on my pallet, listening to Mama cough and Dinah breathe. The frogs outside went quiet later than usual, just after midnight. It happened so sudden I sat up. One moment they were loud, the next it was like somebody had shut a door. The same with the insects. Silence poured through the cracks in the cabin like cold water. It made my skin prickle. Dinah stirred. "You awake?" she whispered. "Yeah, you hear that." I listened. Nothing. Just the far river and our own breathing. "It ain't right," Dinah said. I wanted to tell her to sleep. I wanted to be the older brother who made the world feel safe. But my throat was tight. Then the sound came, far off, from the swamp. A long thin note that rose like smoke. Not a scream, not yet. More like a whistle that no bird ever made. It wavered, climbed, then dropped into something low and rough. It rolled across the fields like it was searching for a place to land. Dinah grabbed my arm. "What is that?" I didn't answer because I did not know. The sound rose again, louder this time, and it had a shape to it that made my stomach turn. Like a voice trying to speak through a throat that was not built for words. It held there, vibrating, then snapped into a full scream. I had heard men scream when whips bit them. I had heard women scream when they lost children. This was not that. This was bigger. It was anger and hunger and something else underneath, like grief that had learned to hate. The scream lasted long enough for me to count my heartbeats twice. Then it ended. The silence after it was worse. In the distance, dogs started barking at once. Not our hounds. Every dog on Magnolia. A frenzy. Chains rattling, men shouting for them to hush, horses stamping in stables. Somewhere near the big house, a lamp flared bright. I slid off my pallet and moved to the cabin window, careful not to make noise. Dinah followed. The yard between quarters and cane field lay gray in moonlight. Nothing moved. Then I saw a shape at the swamp edge. At first I thought it was a man, tall, broad, standing half-hidden among cypress roots. But it did not move like a man. It was still in a way that felt wrong, like it had set itself there on purpose. The distance was too far for details, but I felt it looking this way. Not at the cabins, past them, toward the big house. Dinah sucked in breath. "You see it?" I nodded. "Do not speak," I whispered. I do not know why I said that. Maybe because Abram's words were still in my head. Maybe because some old animal part of me understood that noise invites things. The shape stepped forward into the open. Moonlight hit it full. It was not a man. It was taller than any man I had ever seen. It stood on two legs, yes, but the shoulders were too wide, the arms too long, the head too low. Hair covered it in heavy ropes that shone damp. It moved with a slow certainty, like it was not sneaking, like it was walking in its own house. Dinah pressed her forehead to the window frame. I could feel her shaking. The thing crossed the field without haste. Cane stalks rustled as it brushed by, but it did not bend them much, and that scared me more. Heavy things change the world when they walk. This did not need to. It reached the open space behind the big house where the gardens were. It paused. It lifted its head as if smelling. Dogs barked harder. A white man shouted from the porch, probably Harlan. I cannot make out words from that far, just the ugly cadence of fear turning into command. A lamp moved in an upstairs window, then a gunshot cracked, a flash. The sound slapped the night flat. The thing in the garden did not fall. It did not run. It turned its head toward the porch, slow, and for a single second, the moonlight caught the side of its face. I saw a ridge of brow and a mouth too wide for comfort. I saw teeth that looked like old stone. The porch light wobbled. Another shot. Still the thing did not drop. It took one step closer to the house, then another. I heard the porch boards creak under human feet, rushing back inside. I heard a door slam. The thing stopped. It tilted its head like it was listening to the walls breathe. Dinah whispered, "Josiah, that thing gonna come here." I said, "No." I said it like truth could be made, just by speaking. The thing lifted one long arm and touched the porch post. Not breaking it. Testing. The wood groaned. The sound traveled all the way to my teeth. Another shout from inside the house. Another gunshot, closer now. The muzzle flash lit the yard like lightning. The shot hit the porch rail. Splinters flew. The thing turned its head again. No hurry, no panic. Quiet wrath in the way it stood. Then it moved. It stepped onto the porch. Its weight should have thundered. It did not. The night swallowed the rest of it, the way the swamp swallows a stone. I heard one more sound. A low breath, like a bellows in a forge. Then a human scream cut through everything, sharp and short, and then nothing. The porch lamp went out. The upstairs lamp flickered once, twice, then went dark. The dogs outside fell silent as if someone had snapped a leash around their throats. Dinah clamped a hand over her mouth. Mama woke coughing, confused, asking what happened. I told her to stay down. I listened for more. There was no more. Just the thick, wet hush of a world waiting to see what comes next. Somewhere far in the swamp, a single knock sounded, slow and deep, like a mallet on hollow wood. Then another, then another. A pattern, a message I did not understand yet. By dawn, the whole plantation would. Morning came gray and wet, like the sun had to push through a film of old smoke. The bell did not ring at first light. That alone made people stand in their doorways and look toward the big house like deer in a field. The master always rang the bell, even on Sundays, even when sickness took half the hands, because noise was how he reminded us the world was his. That morning, there was nothing. No bell, no rooster crow. Even the river sounded muted. Harlan rode out before breakfast, face pale and hard, dogs straining at their chains. He went cabin to cabin, counting heads, not asking, demanding like he expected to find the thing behind one of our doors. He made us line up in the yard. He kept his pistol out. His knuckles were white on the grip. He looked like a man trying to remember how to breathe. "Where is Master Rutherford?" he said. Nobody answered. You do not answer questions like that unless you want to be the next one blamed. Harlan took a step down the line, eyes flicking across faces. "Where is the master?" I asked. He ignored me, then turned on Abram because Abram was closest and Abram was old enough that white men liked to pretend respect until they didn't. "Old man, you see anyone near the house last night?" Abram stared past him toward the swamp. "I seen what everyone's seen," Abram said. "Something come out the trees. Something you shot at. Something that did not fall." Harlan's jaw worked like he was chewing gristle. He slapped Abram across the mouth with the back of his hand. Abram stumbled but did not fall. "Talk plain," he said. "What you mean something?" Abram wiped blood from his lip with 2 fingers. "I mean not a man, not a bear. I mean a thing that been here longer than your master's line." Harlan raised the pistol. "You threaten me with devil talk, you lose your tongue." Abram nodded once. "Then take it. It might spare me hearing you lie to your own fear." Harlan aimed the pistol, like he might do it. Then the dogs started growling at the tree line. Low and constant. Every head turned. The swamp edge stood there, dark and still. Harlan lowered the pistol, not because mercy found him, but because he needed his courage for what he thought was coming. He spat into the dirt. "You all stay put," he said. "No one leaves quarters. No one steps past the last row of cane without me seeing. Any fool tries to run this morning, I will hang him from the live oak and call it lesson." He holstered the pistol and rode off toward the big house with the dogs loping behind. We watched him go. The dust would not rise in that damp air. The horse hooves sounded too loud. Dinah was beside me, chin up, eyes sharp. Mama leaned on my arm, coughing. Abram stood a little behind, holding his jaw where it was swelling. I said, "Abram, what you mean longer than their line?" Abram looked at me like he had been waiting for that question. He said, "You ever hear a man say this land was empty before they cleared it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That is a lie told by men who need a clean story. This land was full of people, full of spirits, full of things that do not need our permission. Some of them were pushed back into the wet places. Some of them learned to hide. Some of them stayed and watched. The big house is built on a place that should not be built on. Rutherford people did not buy this land from nobody that owned it right. They took it. And when you take from something old, it remembers you." Dinah said, "You saying it come for the master." Abram nodded. "But coming for him don't mean it won't come for us. They think that thing is a beast. It is not. It makes choices." I wanted to ask more. A shout rose near the big house, then another. A door banged. Horses screamed. The whole yard felt like it was holding breath. We could not see the house from quarters, not fully, but we saw people running, white shirts flashing between hedges. We saw one of the stable boys sprint across the garden, then stop dead and point. Harlan's voice carried clear, rough with panic. "Get a rope. Get torches. Find him. Find her too. Her meaning, the mistress." The stable boy ran again. Another white man galloped up the drive. Someone fired a shotgun into the air, like noise could bully the dark. The dogs barked once, then went quiet, the way they had gone quiet last night. That was when fear moved through the quarters like fever. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, spreading cold. We were marched to the fields anyway, because Harlan was the kind of man who doubled down on cruelty to keep his own fear from showing. But he did not come with us. He sent his cousin Caleb to watch the cane rows while he gathered a search party from the white men and a few trusted drivers. They went into the trees by mid-morning with hounds' rifles and torches that looked ridiculous in full sun. We stood in the cane with machetes and baskets, pretending the world was normal. Nobody talked much. The birds stayed away. The sweat rolled off us anyway. Around noon, a wagon rattled down the lane toward the quarters. I saw it between cane stalks. 2 men rode it, faces hard. The wagon bed was covered with a tarp. A corner lifted in the breeze, and I saw a boot. A white boot. Then a hand, limp, ringed. My heart tightened. The wagon stopped near the big house, not quarters. But word travels on a plantation faster than any horse. By the time the sun leaned west, we knew the master had been found by the swamp edge. Not alive, not whole. People said his head was turned wrong, like his neck had been twisted by a man who did not know his own strength. People said his chest was torn open. People said there were marks on his shoulders like fingers, but too big. Harlan did not let us see the body. He did not need to. The point was already set into our bones. The master was dead and the world was loose. That night they did not lock us in the cabins. They posted men with guns between the quarters and the cane fields, not to protect us, but to stop us from using the chaos to run. Harlan came to the quarters at dusk. His coat was stained. His eyes were bloodshot. He called Abram out front. Abram walked slow. The whip in Harlan's hand looked eager. "You told a tale," Harlan said. "You said it was not man or bear. You know what it is." Abram said, "I know what I heard when I was a boy. I know what the Gullah elders called it before they were sold downriver. I know what the swamp calls it when it wants to scare the small things. But knowing a name don't make you safe." Harlan stepped close, face inches from Abram's. "You going to tell me where it lives?" Abram spat blood again. "It lives wherever you ain't welcome." Harlan hit him with the whip, once, twice, hard. Abram did not cry out. Harlan struck him until his own breathing got ragged and he had to stop. "Use your eyes," Harlan growled. "You see tracks, you follow them. Lead us tomorrow." Abram looked up. His stare was calm and old. "You want me to walk you into its house," Harlan said. "I want you to show me where it took the mistress, because they had not found her." That was the other piece of the story that made the plantation feel cursed. Mistress Eliza was gone. Her bedroom window was open. Her shoes were still by the bed. No sign of struggle in the house, just absence. Like a tide had swept her out. The white folks did not say her name in front of us, but we heard it anyway, whispered through kitchen girls, through stable boys, through the driver who listened too close at doors. Harlan needed her found because his life depended on it. If the master's kin came and saw she was missing on his watch, they would hang him. He would rather hang us first. Abram said, "I will go, if you let Josiah come too." Harlan looked at me. I felt the weight of his gaze like a blade. "You want the boy," he said. Abram nodded. "The boy can read tracks in mud. He is light on his feet. He won't slow you." Harlan did not like being asked anything by a man he owned, but he needed a guide, and he needed someone he could blame if it went bad. "Fine," he said. "You both go. If you lie, if you run, I will bring your families to the oak and let the dogs do the rest." My stomach went hollow. Mama grabbed my arm when Harlan left. "Josiah," she whispered. "No." I wanted to say no, too. But Dinah stood there, eyes burning. "If you don't go," she said, "he will take somebody else, somebody who don't know the woods. They will die and he will still come back mad. Maybe you going is the only way you live." She was 12 and already understood the math of survival. I kissed Mama's forehead. I told her I would come back. It felt like a lie the second it left my mouth. I slept maybe an hour, listening to the night. The frogs did not sing. The insects did not sing. The house lamps burned all night. Twice I heard a long, low knock from the swamp, slow and deep. It was not close. It was not far. It was like a drum telling time for something that did not need clocks. I watched the gaps in the cabin wall until dawn. At first light we met the white men near the last row of cane. Harlan had 6 men with him, Caleb, 2 drivers with rifles, and 3 hired hands from a nearby place. The dogs were with them, whining. The horses did not want to go toward the trees. Harlan dragged one by the bridle and cursed it until it stepped. He handed Abram a lantern, even though the sun was up. Habit from fear. He handed me nothing but a warning look. We moved into the woods in a line. The air inside was cooler but heavy, soaked in the smell of wet rot and old water. The cypress knees rose like broken teeth. Spanish moss hung like funeral cloth. The ground was soft enough to take prints easy. You could read the swamp like a book if you learned its language. We found tracks within 100 steps. The dogs found them first and pulled hard. The prints were not bear. I had seen bear prints on other hunts. These were shaped like feet. Human feet, but stretched out and wide, deep. The stride between them was long as a man and a half. Abram stared down, jaw tight. Harlan swore under his breath. "Keep moving," he said. We followed, step by step. The swamp tried to swallow noise. Water sucked at boots. Mosquitoes whined at ears. Sunlight came in thin blades through the canopy, lighting pockets of mist that felt like breath. The dogs stopped barking. They pulled, then slowed, then tucked tails and looked back at the men. Caleb hit one with the butt of his rifle. The dog yelped but did not move forward. Harlan dragged it by the chain until it stumbled. We went deeper. The tracks stayed straight, no wandering. Like the thing had not been confused, like it had been taking her where it wanted. We crossed a little rise where the water thinned, then dropped into a basin of black muck. There the tracks were fresher, the edges sharp. One print had a smear of something pale along the heel. I knelt close. It was cloth. A strip of white dress fabric torn and stuck in the mud. The mistress dress. A cold line ran down my spine. Harlan snatched it from the mud and held it to his face like he could breathe her back. He said, "She is alive. She has to be." Abram did not answer. He studied the trees. I saw his eyes flick to a hanging bundle of moss, then to a dark root hollow, then to a line of water where nothing moved. He was reading more than tracks. He was listening. We moved another half-mile. The dogs began to whine. The air grew thicker. Not heat, something else. A pressure behind the eyes that made thinking slow. I tasted metal in my mouth. Abram stumbled once and caught himself on his stick. Harlan saw it and cursed him. "You slowing, old man." Abram looked back. "It is not me slowing. It is the swamp pushing." Harlan lifted his rifle at that, more in threat than logic. Then a sound cut through the trees. Not the scream from last night. A low hum, so deep you felt it in your ribs, like a drum that was too big for human hands. The dogs dropped flat. Caleb fell to one knee without meaning to. One of the hired hands vomited into the water. My vision went narrow at the edges. I gripped my machete handle like it could anchor me. Harlan looked around, face white. "What is that?" he hissed. Abram said nothing. The hum faded. The pressure stayed. We rounded a stand, of palmetto, and saw a clearing we did not know was there. Cypress, backed away in a rough circle. The ground in the center was raised and dry, covered in dead reeds laid out in a spiral. Bones lay on the edges. Deer, boar, maybe a man, I could not tell. In the middle stood a pile of things. Not random, placed. A work glove, a horseshoe, a torn hat I recognized from the master's wardrobe. And on top of it, the mistress locket, the one she wore on Sundays. It hung there bright in a shaft of sun. Harlan stepped forward like a man hypnotized. He knelt and grabbed the locket, holding it tight. "Eliza," he called. "Mistress, answer me." His voice sounded small in that clearing. There was no answer. Then the trees behind us cracked. One loud break, like a trunk being twisted. The clearing went colder. The birds that had not been singing took off at once, a flurry of wings like panic. Harlan spun and raised his rifle. The men raised theirs. Abram grabbed my arm hard. "Do not move," he whispered. I could not see the thing at first. It was too big for my brain to place. It stood between two cypress, half hidden by moss, taller than any man, broad enough that the tree trunks looked thin beside it. Hair hung in ropes down its shoulders and back, damp and dark. Its arms were long, hands near its knees. It did not rush. It did not need to. It stepped into the clearing slow, as if entering a church. Its head turned, not like an animal jerking at noise, but like a person deciding where to look. It looked at Harlan, then it looked at Abram, then at me. Not with surprise, with recognition, like it had been waiting for this moment since the first knock last night. I felt the hum again, lower now inside my chest. Harlan fired. The shot echoed hard. The ball hit the thing in the shoulder. I saw hair jump, saw a dark spot bloom beneath it. The thing did not fall. It did not even flinch much. It took one more step. Harlan fired again, wild. The ball hit a tree. Splinters rained. The hired hands began to back away, muttering prayers. Caleb tried to work his flintlock hands shaking. Abram stepped forward a half step, still holding my arm. He lifted his chin and spoke in a low voice I did not know he had. Not English, not any plantation talk, a rolling rhythm like river water over stone. The thing stopped. The hum eased a little. It tilted its head at Abram. Abram spoke again, short like a command. The thing answered, not with words, with a breath that moved the reeds on the ground. It reached one hand to the pile in the center and brushed the reeds away. Something pale lay beneath. A sleeve, a forearm, the mistress arm, not whole. The hand was missing. The skin was mud-stained. Harlan made a sound like a man choking. He stumbled forward. "You devil!" he rasped, and raised the rifle like he would club it. Abram yanked me back. "Harlan!" "No," Abram said. "You do not go near it." Harlan was beyond hearing. He swung the rifle butt toward the thing. The thing moved faster than any bear. One blur, one sweep of an arm. Harlan flew backward like a rag. He hit a cypress knee and did not get up. The men screamed. The dogs bolted, chains snapping from hands. Caleb fired in panic. The shot went wide. One hired hand ran and sank into muck almost at once, thrashing, screaming, getting pulled down by black water that did not care. The other two fled through palmetto, dropping torches. The clearing filled with smoke and chaos. Abram stood still, eyes locked on the thing. The thing did not chase the white men. It did not lunge at me. It stepped to Harlan's body and leaned over him. I heard a wet cracking sound. Then it lifted, what looked like a long strip of cloth from Harlan's chest. Not cloth, meat. It turned its head, sniffed it, then tossed it aside like it was not hunting. Like Harlan's body was a message, not a meal. Abram spoke again. The thing looked at him. Abram said, "You took what you came for. Leave the rest." The thing did not leave. It stepped toward us. My legs went numb. The hum rose. I felt my teeth ache. The world narrowed to the clearing in that huge shape. It stopped 2 paces from Abram. I could smell it now, a mix of wet fur, old earth, and something sharp like ammonia. Its breath rolled over us hot and damp. Abram did not back up. He put his stick down and opened his hands. "I know you," he said, in plain English now. "You've been watching. You've been counting." The thing leaned closer. Its face was hard to see through the hair, but I saw eyes set deep, dark, but not empty. Alive with a kind of patience that scared me more than rage. Abram said, "These people here are not your enemy. We did not bring chains to your water. We did not cut your trees by choice." The thing breathed again. The hum faded enough that I could think. Then, to my horror, I heard a faint sound from behind the reeds at the edge of the clearing. A weak moan. I turned my head and saw her. Mistress Eliza, alive, barely. She was lying in the shadow of a fallen log, clothes torn, hair matted with mud. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Her left arm was gone from the elbow, down, blood-crusted and dark. She was breathing shallow, like each breath was a question. The thing had not killed her. It had taken part of her and left her alive to be found. A lesson written in flesh. Harlan had not lived because he was the tool. She lived because she was the symbol. Abram saw her too. His shoulders and zagged like the weight of all of it finally landed. The thing turned its head toward her, then back to Abram. Abram said, "You want them to know fear. They know it now. You want them to leave this place. They will not. Their greed is a root deeper than your swamp." The thing made a noise then, not a scream. Something lower, almost like a sigh. It reached down and picked up the mistress's locket from Harlan's hand where it had fallen. It held it between fingers, long as my forearm. It looked at it. Then it pressed the locket into the mud with one slow, deliberate push until it disappeared, burying it, erasing her claim. Then it turned to me. I could not stop shaking. It stepped closer, so close that the hair on its arm brushed my chest. I smelled the swamp on it. I smelled old storms. It lifted a hand and touched my shoulder once, light as you could imagine, for something that could bend trees. My body locked. I expected pain. There was none. I felt a pressure behind my eyes and a sudden image in my mind that was not mine. A street of dark water winding through cypress. A row of canoes long ago. People with faces painted white. A fire on a mound. The big house not there yet. The cane not there. Just the swamp and a feeling of home. Then another image slammed into me. Men in chains stepping off a boat. Blood in the river. Trees cut. A mound leveled. Smoke. The big house rising like a scar. A man in a fine coat standing on the porch, holding a paper and smiling. The thing pulled its hand away. The images faded like breath on glass. I gasped. Abram watched me. He knew I had seen something. The thing stepped back. It turned its head toward the deeper swamp, where the trees grew tighter. It made that low knocking sound, not with wood, but with its own throat. 3 slow beats. Then it moved away, not running, gliding through reeds and moss until it merged with shadow and was gone. The hum went with it. The clearing felt suddenly too normal, which was worse. Abram grabbed my arm. "Take her," he said. We hauled Mistress Eliza up between us. Careful because she was slick with blood and fainting. We limped out of that clearing, following the path the men had trampled in panic. We found Caleb half a mile out, sitting in the mud rocking, rifle empty, eyes wide. He looked at us carrying her like he had seen ghosts walk on water. Harlan body we left. Not because we could not drag him, but because Abram would not let us. He said, "If you carry him out, you carry the thing message away. Let them find it where it lies." We made it back to the plantation by late afternoon. The white folks were in a frenzy, searching for Harlan and the men who had fled, when they saw us carrying Eliza. A cry rose that was half relief and half horror. They rushed her inside. They did not thank us. They did not look at our hands bleeding from reeds. Caleb stumbled behind us and started babbling about a monster and Harlan death. They slapped him quiet and dragged him in too. We stood in the yard alone while the big house swallowed its own fear. Then a carriage came from down the road. 2 men stepped out, kin of the master, faces already set into anger. They demanded answers. They got pieces. By sundown, Harlan's body was found. The dogs, the hired hands, the whole party finally stumbled back without him. His chest torn open, his face frozen in a fear that made even the white men look away. The kin did not cry for him. They cursed his failure. They blamed us. They blamed the swamp. They did not blame themselves. That night they locked the quarters tight again, and they made plans. Not to leave Magnolia. Not to stop what they were doing, but to hunt. They talked about bringing a militia, about bloodhounds from Charleston, about setting fires in the swamp. People like that believe the world is a thing you can shoot until it obeys. We heard their plans through kitchen walls and through the driver who had to carry their whiskey. Abram listened and shook his head. "They will go in there and die," he said. "Or they will go in there and make it worse." Dinah asked, "Worse how?" Abram looked toward the swamp line in the moonlight. "You ever poke at a gator in a hole?" he said. "You might get it to bite one time, then you might find out there were 3 more you did not see. The thing we saw is not lonely. It is part of something old. It is like the swamp itself wearing skin. You burn the swamp, it does not die. It just remembers hotter." The next days were fever. Mistress Eliza lived, but she was not the same. She lay upstairs in the big house, moaning and raving at shadows. She kept saying there was a face in the reeds, a face like a man but older, and hands that lifted her like a child. She said she heard knocks all around her in the dark, like people talking in a language she could not hear. The white men said she was delirious. But they also nailed boards over every downstairs window and kept lamps burning even at noon. The baby boy cried more than usual, like he felt the fear in the walls. The kin sent riders for help. They brought a preacher from Beaufort. They brought a doctor with a bag of leeches. They brought 5 more overseers from nearby plantations, each one eager to prove he was harder than the last. They came with rifles and dogs and torches. They marched into the swamp on the 3rd morning after Harlan's death. Caleb led them because he was all that was left of the men who knew the first trail. I watched them go from the cane field edge. 40 men, dogs straining, torches smoking in daylight. The horses refused the line again, so they went on foot. A long column of fear dressed as pride. Abram stood beside me in the cane. Silent. He said, "That swamp about to feed." They were gone all day. The plantation was restless. Work continued because work always continued, but every hand kept glancing toward the trees. By afternoon, the sky turned bruised with storm. Thunder rumbled low. The air got thick again. The frogs fell silent. That silence had a taste now, like iron. The white men did not come back by dusk. The kin rode up and down the lane, shouting into the woods. The dogs in the quarters began to whine, even without hearing anything. Then just after dark, a sound rolled out of the swamp. Not one scream, many. Men screaming, dogs screaming, a chaos of voices that tangled into a single wail and then snapped off as if a blade had cut them. The storm broke at that exact moment. Rain fell in sheets. Lightning lit the swamp edge bright as day, and in that flash I saw shapes moving between the trees. Not one, several. Tall hulking silhouettes sliding through rain. One of them stopped at the edge and turned its head toward the plantation. The lightning caught its face. It was the one from before. I knew it by the slope of the shoulders, but behind it, farther back, were others, smaller maybe, but still bigger than men. Their eyes caught the light wrong. Like deep water reflecting moon, the flash ended. Darkness slammed back. The rain drowned every small sound. We stood frozen in the quarters, looking out into blackness, afraid to breathe. The next morning, the kin sent another party to retrieve the hunters. Nobody came back. Not a man, not a dog. They found torches stuck upright in mud like grave markers. They found rifles bent or snapped. They found a hat of one overseer hanging from a cypress limb dripping rain. They found a pile of bones on a mound arranged in a circle, cleaned of flesh far too fast. They did not go farther. The swamp had drawn a line. That should have been enough. It was not. Instead, the kin did what men like them always did. They turned their fear into fury. They doubled the work, claiming losses needed covering. They brought in arms for the white men and patrolled at night. They whipped 3 boys for stealing a lantern, claiming they were trying to signal runaways. They put Abram in the stocks for speaking back when they called the swamp cursed. They said it was witchcraft. They said it was Negro devilry. They said anything that let them avoid the truth, that their own arrogance had woken something they could not put back to sleep. 2 nights later, the knocks started closer. 3 slow beats, always from the tree line, always just beyond where a lantern could show. The white men fired into darkness. Bullets thudded into trunks. The knocks continued like laughter. The dogs refused to go near the cane now, even for meat. The horses sweated and kicked in their stalls. The baby boy stopped sleeping and began to have fits of crying that made the mistress shriek along with him. One dawn, a driver was found in the field with his head turned wrong, the same way the master had been. No tracks near him, but the big prints in the dew. On his chest lay a single cane stalk tied in a knot. A message. We saw it carried past quarters on a mule cart. The kin said the driver had tried to run and been killed by alligators. Nobody believed that. Abram said, "The thing is trimming the tree, cutting branches that touch its water." The kin swore to burn the swamp. They hired men with barrels of pitch and torches. They started at the edge, lighting reeds and palmetto. Smoke rose oily and black. The flames crawled, then stopped as if the wet earth had swallowed them. A wind came out of nowhere and pushed smoke back into the fields. Men coughed and stumbled. The fire died. Then a scream rolled out of the swamp, louder than anything we had heard yet, and the men dropped torches and ran. The swamp did not burn. It inhaled. That night, the thing came again. Not to the big house, to the quarters. It came without a scream, without warning. One moment we were inside, shivering in damp. The next the cabin walls trembled like a storm had hit them. A shadow fell across our doorway. I grabbed Dinah's hand. Mama started coughing hard enough to choke. The shadow moved on. Another cabin cried out as boards cracked. A man shouted for help. Another shout cut off mid-word. Feet thudded in the mud outside. Not many. One heavy set, another smaller. I peeked through a crack. The yard was lit by moon. I saw the big shape moving between cabins, low and careful, reaching into doorways like it was selecting. I saw another shape behind it, shorter but still huge, maybe a young one, copying the movement. They stopped at Abram's cabin. The door did not open from inside. It broke outward with one push. I heard wood splinter. I heard Abram's voice, not afraid, just steady. I heard him speaking that old language again, the river rhythm. The big shape froze. The smaller one crouched. Then the big one made a low sound and backed away from the doorway. It turned and moved toward the far cabin, the one where the youngest girls slept. A scream rose from inside. It reached in. I saw one long arm lift a struggling body like a sack. The girl screamed once more, then went limp, either fainting or worse. The smaller shape took another girl, older, who fought harder. 2 more cabins were opened. 2 boys were lifted out, not in rage, in purpose, like a farmer selecting livestock. The shapes moved toward the cane field carrying them, then into the trees. The whole thing lasted less than a minute. We did not chase. We could not. When they were gone, the yard was silent except for sobbing. We gathered under the oak, holding lanterns like they could keep us together. Mothers wailed. Fathers stared into mud. We counted who was missing. 5, 2 girls, 3 boys. Dinah clutched Mama and shook. Mama kept whispering their names like prayer beads. I felt my own anger rise, hot, not at the thing, at the people who made us helpless, at the kin who were already deciding how to punish us for being taken. One man said we should run now while chaos was thick. Another said run to where? They own roads, they own dogs, the swamp owns the dark. Abram came limping out of his broken cabin. His face was bruised, but his eyes were clear. He held his stick like a staff. They took the young ones, he said. Not random. They want something. A woman cried, "Want what?" Abram looked toward the swamp. The old stories say the swamp people trade. They take when they are owed. They return when a debt is paid. The debt of blood, the debt of land, the debt of disrespect. Josiah, he said to me, you saw something in the clearing. I nodded. Those images. Abram said, you saw memory. That thing showed you why it is here, what it remembers, what it blames. It remembers the first men who cut the mound and built this house. It remembers the first bodies dragged through water. It does not know our chains are the same chain. It only sees that this land hurts and the hurt has a face. Dinah looked up. How we make it stop? Abram said, we cannot make it stop, but maybe we can speak to it so it stops taking us. The next morning the kin came to quarters furious. They had heard the screams, they saw the broken doors, they saw the empty pallets. They did not ask what happened. They accused. Runaways, they said. Plot, they said. Witch, they said. They dragged 3 men out and whipped them until their backs looked like red rope, claiming they must have helped the young ones escape. Mama cried for them. The kin did not care. They posted more guards, doubled our night locks, and said one more disappearance would cost 10 lives. The swamp did not care either. That afternoon, the knocks came in daylight. 3 beats from the trees, then 3 more closer. The guards fired, nothing visible. The knocks started again from behind the guards, from the cane field edge, like the thing was walking circles around them for fun. The guards ran back to the house, pale. We heard the mistress wailing upstairs at the same time, screaming her missing arm was crawling on the walls. The plantation felt like it was rotting from the inside out. That night, Abram came to my cabin door. He did not ask to come in. He just stood there in moonlight and said, "We go to the swamp." I stared. "You gone mad?" "We go to the swamp," he repeated. "Before it comes again. We go with no guns. We go with what we can offer. We go to the mound the old people used to pray at before it was cut down. The mound is still there. Buried, but there. You felt it in your head when it touched you. It knows you saw. That makes you spoken to." Dinah went rigid. "You going to leave me?" Abram looked at her. "You are coming too." Dinah blinked. "Me?" Abram nodded. "The thing took children. It may listen to a child voice more than a man voice. Also, you are small and quiet. You see things." Dinah looked at me. I wanted to say no, but I understood at once what Abram was doing. He was choosing the people least likely to be noticed leaving. The people most likely to slip past guards in darkness. I said, "What we offer it." Abram reached into his coat and pulled out a small bundle. Inside were 4 things: a handful of salt, a strip of red cloth from an old head wrap, a carved wooden charm shaped like a turtle, and a piece of iron, a broken shackle link. Salt for boundary, red cloth for blood memory, turtle for waterkin, iron for the chain that binds us both. Abram said, "We tell it the chain is not ours. We ask for the children back. We ask it to take its anger to the ones who deserve it." I swallowed. "You think it cares?" Abram shrugged. "I think it understands more than dogs and guns. I think it knows stories." We left before midnight while rain clouds hid the moon. We slipped between cabins, avoiding guards who were drunk on fear and whiskey near the big house. The cane field was a whispering wall. We moved through it, low, careful. Dinah led because she knew where the ground was firm. I carried no machete. Abram carried his stick. The bundle was in his coat. When we reached the tree line, the air changed at once, cooler, heavier, like stepping into a room where someone has been waiting silently for hours. The frogs did not sing. The swamp was not empty. It was holding itself still to listen. We went in. We followed the faint path I had followed with Harlan. But now it felt different without white men noise. The water sucked at our feet softer. The trees creaked slow. Once, far off, a low knock sounded. Not warning, a marker. I felt my chest tighten. Dinah took my hand without speaking. We found the clearing before dawn, guided by memory, and the way the reeds lay flattened in that spiral. The bones were still there. The pile of objects was scattered now, as if something had swept through. The mud where the mistress' arm lay was empty. The air smelled of old smoke and wet hair. Abram stepped into the center and knelt. He spread the salt in a thin circle around us. Not wide, just enough to say we were not prey. He placed the red cloth on the ground. He set the turtle charm on top. He set the iron link beside it. Then, he began to speak that old language again. His voice was low, steady, like a drum in a far house. I did not understand the words, but they made my bones feel like they had heard them before. Dinah watched the trees with wide eyes. I watched too. The sky lightened to a bruised gray. Fog slid between trunks. Then the hum began. Low at first, a vibration in my feet. It rose through the reeds and into my chest. My teeth ached. Abram kept speaking. The hum swelled, then steadied, like a breath held. A shape moved in the tree line, then another. The big one stepped out first. Behind it, two more stood in shadow, smaller but still huge. One had a limp, one had lighter hair, almost gray. They were not a pack the way dogs are a pack. They were a family. I felt that with sick clarity. The big one came closer. It stopped at the salt line and did not cross. It looked at Abram. Abram bowed his head. "We come in peace," he said in English. "We come to speak." The big one breathed. The hum dipped. It reached a hand toward the bundle and hovered above it. Abram said, "We know your pain. We know what the house did to your water. We know the men who cut your mound and killed your people. We know they still here, still cutting, still chaining. But we are not them. We are chained too. We are trapped on their land, the way you are trapped in your swamp." The thing made a low sound like wood shifting. Abram pointed to the iron link. "This is the chain they put on us. It is not given by us. We did not choose their boats. We did not choose their guns. We did not choose their greed. We bleed under it. You bled under them first. So we ask you, do not take our children for their sins. Take what you are owed from the ones who owe." The big one tilted its head. The hum rose, then fell. Then, to my shock, it answered the way it had answered Abram before, not in words but in pictures that bloomed behind my eyes. I saw the mound again. I saw it whole, covered in shell and earth, with fire on top. I saw people dancing around it, faces painted, singing. Then I saw men with axes and torches. I saw the mound torn. I saw bodies thrown into water. I saw the first big house rising. Then I saw ships, not one, many. I saw people like me chained in holds. I saw them unloaded on this shore, driven into Cain. I saw whips. I saw women crying. I saw children pulled from arms. I saw a creature watching from reeds, younger than the one before me now, confused, angry. I saw it reach into a cabin long ago and lift a crying child. I saw the mother chase and get cut down by an overseer. I saw the creature howl and retreat. I saw it learn. The images stopped. My eyes were wet. I understood the message. It had been taking children for generations, not out of hunger but out of a broken logic of debt. Taking what men like Rutherford had taken from it. Children for children. It did not see the difference in whose children they were. Dinah gasped softly. I think she saw it too. Abram steadied himself. "You see now," he said. "We are both victims of the same hand. The hand is not ours." The big one stepped closer. It crouched a little, bringing its face lower. It looked at Dinah. Dinah did not run. She stood straight, trembling but still. She said softly, "We want them back. Please." The word please felt like a stone in my mouth because I was not sure if it made sense to say to a thing like this. But Dinah said it anyway, and the big one inhaled deep. The hum softened. It reached out and touched the turtle charm. Then it did something that made my breath stop. It lifted the iron link and held it to its own wrist. There were scars there, pale lines in the hair. Old man-made lines, trap lines, chains maybe. Long ago. It looked at the link, then tossed it into the mud with an angry flick. It was saying the chain disgusted it. Good. Abram nodded. Abram then said, "We will help you if you help us. We can lead our people away from this place if you let us go safe. We can stop cutting near your water if we live long enough to do it. Let the children go and we will leave." The big one stood. It turned its head to the shadows. The gray-haired one stepped forward. It held something in its long arms, a small body wrapped in reeds. It laid the bundle just inside the salt line and stepped back. Another shadow moved and placed another bundle. Then another. Then another. 5 bundles. My heart pounded. I rushed forward, but Abram grabbed me. "Wait," he whispered. I waited with my whole body shaking. The big one made a low sound, softer now. It backed away from the salt line and the hum faded to almost nothing. Abram looked at me and nodded. I stepped over the salt line and tore the reeds away. The first bundle was a boy, Elijah, 12, breathing, eyes fluttering open like he had been sleeping too deep. The second was Sarah, one of the girls taken, alive but shaking. The third was Moses, his face bruised but breathing. The fourth was the other girl, Elaine, arms scraped raw but alive. The fifth was the smallest boy, Tom, only 8. His eyes were open but unfocused. He kept looking past me at the trees like part of him was still there. Mama was right to say the swamp takes pieces even when it returns bodies. I looked up at the big one. It was watching us with a stillness that felt like calculation, not kindness. But it had returned them. That was real. Dinah knelt and took Tom's hand. She whispered his name over and over until he blinked and seemed to come back. Abram bowed his head again. "Thank you," he said, in his old language first, then in English. The big one did not answer. It turned away. The 3 shapes slipped back into the trees like darkness folding. The hum vanished. The clearing felt empty of presence but full of meaning. We got the children up and started back before light fully broke. They moved slow, weak but moved. We had done it. We had spoken. We had made a bargain older than any law in Beaufort. I did not trust it fully, but bargains are sometimes all the enslaved have. When we reached the cane field edge near quarters, the sun was up. The guards saw us coming and raised rifles, shouting. Then they saw the children and froze. We marched into the quarters with 5 returned lives, and the whole place erupted in crying, laughing, knees hitting mud. Mothers clutched their babies like they would never loosen again. Men held their sons and looked at the tree line with a fear that had changed shape. The kin came running, faces hard. They demanded to know how the children were found. Abram said, "The swamp returned them." The kin called it lies. They called Abram witch. They wanted to whip him again, but the children were alive, and even white pride had to swallow that reality. They backed off, not out of respect, but out of confusion. Confusion can be a pause, and pauses can be a door. That evening, Abram gathered the elders in his broken cabin. He did not whisper, he spoke plain. "The swamp has drawn a line," he said. "The white men will keep crossing until they are eaten. But the swamp thing has agreed to spare us if we leave. We must leave now, tonight, before the kin decide to punish someone for their own fear. We go north through the rice marshes, then to the pine ridges, then beyond their patrols. We do not go into the swamp again, we go around it. We leave Magnolia to the men who built it. Let their greed meet the thing they woke. People argued, people cried, people were tired of running from dogs. But they had seen children lifted like dolls. They had seen 14 white men vanish in a night. They had seen the master dead and the mistress broken and Harlan torn open. The world on Magnolia was already ending. Better to choose your ending than have it chosen. By midnight, we moved. Not all of us. Some were too old. too afraid, too tied by family to risk it. But a long line slipped out between cane and river, carrying babies wrapped in quilts, carrying cornmeal in sacks, carrying nothing else but breath. Dinah walked beside me with Tom on her hip. Mama leaned on my arm, coughing but stepping. Abram led, stick-tapping steady. The river mist hit us. The guards were drunk again, arguing over who would be blamed next for the swamp. We crossed a shallow ford and entered the marsh. Behind us, Magnolia sat, under moonlight like a rotting tooth. The big house lamps burned. The sound of a distant knock rolled out once, slow and deep. Not after us, toward the house, like a reminder to those who stayed. We walked all night. We heard dogs once far off, but they did not find our trail. At dawn, we reached Pine Ridge, where the ground was dry and the air smelled clean for the first time in my life. We rested under trees that did not drip moss like tears. We did not hear any knocks there. We did not hear screams. We kept moving for days, hiding by day, walking by night, guided by men who knew stars and women who knew herbs. Some of us made it to a free settlement near the Union line. Some of us vanished on the way. That is how it goes. Freedom, even in pieces, is still freedom. I never went back to Magnolia. I heard things later through whispers in towns. They said the kin tried to keep the plantation running with hired hands. They said the swamp took those hands one by one. They said the big house caught fire one night with no torch found. They said the baby boy disappeared from his cradle and was never seen again. They said Mistress Eliza went mad and wandered into the cane barefoot, speaking to trees, and the cane closed behind her. They said the fields went to ruin, cane choking itself, rice paddies flooding without tending. They said the swamp spread. People stopped buying that land. By the time the war came and chains cracked across the South, Magnolia was already a ghost place, half swallowed by water and vines. Sometimes years later, when I was free and older, I would wake to the smell of wet rot in a dry cabin far from any swamp. I would wake to a low hum in my chest, like a drum too deep for ears. I would remember the touch of that huge hand on my shoulder and the pictures it poured into my mind. I would remember that bargains made in fear can still be honored more faithfully than bargains made on paper. I do not call the thing a devil. Devils are men who build houses on stolen mounds and pretend the land is empty. The thing was not good. It was not kind. It was old. It was hurt. It knew debt. It kept its own law. And for one night that law spared us. If you ever walk the low country and you feel the frogs go quiet all at once, if you hear 3 slow knocks from a tree line that should not be there, do not answer with a gun. Answer with respect. Remember that some places were never meant to be owned. Some stories were never meant to be told. But they are still there, waiting in the wet dark, keeping count.